Good morning, everybody. It's 10 a.m. Friday, so it's must be time for Friday Reflections. Hello, my name is Peter Bolland, and welcome to San Diego Oasis and our weekly Friday morning, 10 a.m. West Coast gathering called Friday Reflections. I'm grateful that we have this time together, and I'm especially grateful for all of you, every single one of you who generously came into this gathering and supported this gathering financially and with your presence. I really, really appreciate that. I wonder if you think about it this way sometimes. I know I certainly do, that when you put your $5 down to get into this little meeting, you're not just buying your own ticket, right? You're building a program that serves so many people beyond you, people I don't even know, that you don't even know. Your patronage and participation in all of the programs here at San Diego Oasis are building a place, maintaining a place, preserving a place that has become a refuge for so many of us, especially in this last year, but for many, many years, right? In other ways, but especially in this last year, right? Those of us who come to San Diego Oasis for some kind of learning and engagement and community and growth, and dare I say healing. I know that's how I often feel coming out of the sessions that I'm privileged and honored to do here with all of you at San Diego Oasis. So yeah, it kind of reminds me of a story, an old medieval story about a man in a medieval village who went for a walk one day, and he came upon a construction site, and he saw some guys working, and he asked the first guy, who had a brick in his hand and was putting mortar on it to lay into a niche in the wall. And he asked the first guy, "So what are you doing?" And the man said, "Oh, I'm putting some mortar on this brick and I'm laying it in this wall." And he said, "Oh, okay." So he kept walking, and a little further around the side, he ran into a second laborer, and he asked that man, "So what are you doing?" And he said, "I'm building a wall." He said, "Okay." So he kept walking, and he got around the corner, and there was a third man. And he asked that man and he was doing the same work. And he asked that third man, "What are you doing?" And he said, "We are building a cathedral." And that story stuck with me because it's really instructive to me that we can view our actions as self-interest or one little tiny task, or we can step back and kind of see the task as part of a larger task, as part of a larger activity, until you get this cosmic vision. You're so distant and you can see the interconnectedness of everything, and how every little piece is laying one brick in the cathedral of the cosmos. It's a beautiful story that reminds me how, with a simple shift and an imaginative leap, one can see one's tasks as being far more purposeful and impactful than one might initially consider. I share this story with my students at Southwestern College, of course, and you know, they're grinding through college. They're 19, 23. You remember those days, and they're, especially in this time of COVID, they're impacted. They're struggling, and they have to read this chapter or work on this study guide or take this quiz, and it's always like one burden after another. And I wonder, and I ask them, are you just working on this assignment, or are you thinking about how this assignment is part of an entire course, and how those 3 units that you'll get for this course are part of your entire degree program? And are you laying a brick, or are you building a cathedral? Because the action in the moment is the same, but the way you contextualize it fills you with, I don't know, energy and purpose. You see your $5 contribution to Oasis for this program. You see it as more than just you buying your entrance to something that you sort of wish was free. You start to see, oh, I'm really part of something bigger. And by the way, thank you especially to those of you who go far above and beyond the $5. Not everybody can, but we know that many of our participants have become major donors of San Diego Oasis, and spectacular, right? Again, that's not for everyone, but we're sure glad that there are folks who are moved to do that. And so thank you for your generosity. You know, my students are not just getting an A in this class or getting this degree. They're actually changing their whole lives. And that's the cathedral, right? When you go through any education growth process, you are changed. You become a better thinker, more globally aware, more empathetic. Your reading and writing chops go up. Your critical thinking chops go up. Those are skills no one can ever take away from you when you carry them into every room you ever walk into, every task, every challenge, every opportunity. I try to tell my college students, you're not just competing some arbitrary program so you can get the degree and you can make more money. I mean, all those things are true too, but you're changing your future children's lives. You know, the single biggest predictor of success of kids in school, in kindergarten, even as early as kindergarten, is the vocabulary of their mother. I know, what a weird data point, huh? The single best predictor of a student's success throughout their career in school is the vocabulary of the mother, how big it is. Now, that's not the only thing, and let's not get deterministic about this, but it intrigues me, you know, because so many of my students are young mothers with kids in school, and some kids come from homes where parents, where there are books and they talk about ideas around the dinner table, they have family meal, and what an advantage, you know. And other kids come from homes where there's no books, they never witnessed their parent pick up a book. They don't talk about ideas. And then they come into college and they're so sort of behind in terms of their love of literature and capacity to analyze thoughts and sentences and paragraphs, let alone write at a high quality. So I'm thinking about all these things today in terms of your $5 admission to this gathering. So anyway, thanks again. So last week I showed you an owl pellet. I held an owl pellet up to the camera. I don't know if my camera is even discerning enough for you to have seen that very good, but there's another owl in our program today. I was lying in bed last night, falling asleep, and I have the privilege of living in a very quiet neighborhood. When I was poor and in college, I lived in a neighborhood that was very noisy. And the sounds you heard at night were police helicopters circling overheads and saying on the public address system, "Your attention, please. The suspect is wearing a brown flannel shirt." And, and then you hear footsteps running down the alley behind you. But now I live in the suburbs and all the utility poles are buried underground. It's very bucolic. There's just trees and it's quiet. And when I lie in bed at night, I don't hear a thing. I'm so profoundly grateful for that. And last night, as I was lying there falling asleep, I heard that beautiful, one of the most beautiful, mournful sounds that the night can make. And that is the song of the great horned owl. Hoo, hoo, hoo. Right? It's always a little trio of notes, one note followed by two notes. And then about 15 seconds of silence. And you lay there going, "Oh, that was so cool. Please do it again." And then hoo, hoo, hoo. And it's just, I can't describe the feeling. I'm such a geek about stuff like this. I just love it. I'm laying there getting excited because it's not every night. In fact, I'll where I live in my neck of the woods, I'll hear this 3 or 4 times a year if I'm lucky. It's usually coyotes making a huge racket, which is awesome in another way. But these owls, it's just remarkable to me. It's pitch dark, just starlight and whatever phase of the moon and how high or low it is. And that's it. And I'd be stumbling around and I'm in my bed curling up to go unconscious. And he's out there going to work or she's out there going to work. And I think about that, how they fly silently. They have special feathers on the front of their wings that are like down so that when they fly, you can't hear a thing. There's no, like you can hear a crow fly by or a raven. They make this kind of sound. But owls, the first thing you know is talons in the back of your neck, right? Deadly killers. And they've, They have this amazing night vision, those big saucer eyes. They can see things you and I can never see. Their hearing is incredible. They can hear a mouse way off in the grass long before they see it. And we have 7 bones in our neck. They have 14. They can't turn their eyes. They can't do this. Their eyes are fixed, but they can spin their head around like Linda Blair in The Exorcist, right? I can turn my neck a little bit. Mostly I just turn my shoulders. They can spin that neck 270 degrees. So I'm sitting there last night, thinking about all of this and thinking about how miraculous our fellow creatures are and how they're each excellent in their own way. Owls have been in existence for 80 million years. 80 million years. Homo sapiens, we walked out of Africa 100,000 years ago. I mean, we are just new on the planet. And those guys are dinosaurs, really. Survivors of dinosaurs who fly through the night and take care of the excess rodents. And I think about her excellence of function. The Greek word for that, the Latin word for that is virtue. The Greek word is arete. Excellence. To take your potentialities and burnish them to their fullest perfection, their fruition. And this is what Aristotle says is our eudaimonia. This is our joyful, satisfied life, is taking whatever potentialities are within us and realizing them. And I think about our animal friends, and that's their whole life, right? That owl is not apologizing for anything. That owl is simply living out his optimal life, being the best owl that they know how to be. And there's something inspiring about that. The Thomas Merton passages I was reading this morning were about integrity, about not conforming to what you think you're supposed to do or be, even for God, but being exactly who you are as a way of honoring God. And Merton, being a Catholic, talks about it in theistic terms, God terms. But in that sense of like, yeah, I'm gonna be Peter Bolland. Who is that? I'm not going to imitate anybody else. I'm going to work with the tools that I've got and the passions, and find the fire that's burning in me and kind of blow on it and help it grow. And that's in Sanskrit terms, that's my dharma, my purpose, my sacred purpose, just as that owl's sacred purpose is to be an ideal owl. And that struck me as a really rich way of the way nature communicates to us. I'm in my little bed and I got the window open so I can hear the night sounds, and the distance between me and that owl disappeared. And I was so grateful for his visit. And it reminded me of a film I saw this week, and I want to recommend to you. I bet a lot of you have already seen it. Now, you have to have the Netflix streaming services. I don't think it's been ripped off and put on YouTube yet. But I know a lot of you are paying your $10 or $15 a month or whatever it is for Netflix, because it's really an incredible resource. If you don't have a streaming service, that's the one everybody starts with, right? And you probably already use Amazon if you buy stuff. So you already have Amazon Prime. Get that going on your TV too. These are the things we've all learned how to do in pandemic, how to make our TVs work for us. Because I'm from the same world a lot of you are. The TV has a click, 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 clicker and 5 channels. But that world is long gone. So Netflix has a documentary that came out last September, I think. It's called My Octopus Teacher. Do you know it? Some of you are nodding. Yeah. Listen, put that on your list. Watch that. My Octopus Teacher on Netflix. It won't be hard to find because it turned into a global mega blockbuster hit. It's one of Netflix's most successful documentaries in their history. So as soon as you open Netflix, it'll probably come right up. Let me tell you about this film just for a couple minutes. It's about a guy who befriends an octopus. That's it. That's the whole movie. You're like, why do I want to watch that? That sounds dumb. I've seen the boring Jacques Cousteau underwater documentaries before. Trust me, it's nothing like that. It is not really in the end about octopus at all. It is a profound meditation on what you and I often think about when we gather here. Let me see if I can make that clearer. My octopus teacher is about a guy called Craig Foster, a man in his middle years, 40s, and he's got a family, but they're not really in the film. And he lives in South Africa on the coast. And by trade, he's a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker, and a video editor, and all of that. And he gets to a point in his career, and this is the story he tells at the beginning of the film, where he was just so stressed out, so burned out, that he just realized my life is out of control, and I'm miserable, and I need to make a profound change. And he goes back to his childhood roots, which is diving, snorkeling, free diving, right? No scuba, just with a snorkel, no wetsuit in the very cold water of the Cape of South Africa. But he begins to dive like he did when he was a boy, more and more. And he literally becomes friends with this octopus. And that's probably all I'll say. But what is so transformative, get some tissues when you watch this movie, because you'll be weeping by the end, with grief, with joy, with spiritual awakening. I can't tell you how moved I was by this film. It racked me. And I have been, maybe it's because I've been spending a lot of time here lately, the Bhagavad Gita. Again, in the Eknath Easwaran translation. He's the best translation, whether it's the Upanishads that I've talked about before or the Bhagavad Gita. I've been spending a lot of time here lately, and so maybe that's why my octopus teacher had such an impact, because there are some passages here that I'm going to share with you in a moment. I've got them bookmarked here that might explain why that film hit me so hard and brought me so much depth and joy and fascination. And I'm telling you, that movie was church. It was church to me. It was church. And I think the filmmakers, the guy's name is, the guy in the movie's name is Craig Foster. So he's one of the producers, and he had a couple of partners who were also writers and producers. And these filmmakers did something really brilliant. Like I said, this is no mere nature film about the ocean or biology or oceanography. This is about what I've been trying to talk about today. The way I felt listening to that owl while I was in bed last night, the connection that we feel with nature, and specifically with our animal teachers. And let me just pull a few passages from the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is, let me say two things here. I'll tell you briefly what this is for those of you maybe not familiar with this book. But first, I want to refer you to my YouTube channel, Peter Bolland TV on YouTube. So next time you're on YouTube, just Google my name or search Peter Bolland. It'll come up. I just shot a 5-part series on the Bhagavad Gita and uploaded it to my YouTube channel for my Philosophy 107 Asian philosophy students. But it's for all of us. It's for you too. So if you are curious about a 2.5-hour tour, 5 30-minute videos, 2.5-hour tour through this book for free, just go to my YouTube channel and you can start watching them there. But I've been so immersed in this text lately because I'm getting ready to teach it these next 2 weeks to my Asian philosophy students. And so making those videos just brought so much of this to a head for me. And I was perfectly primed when I watched this video. When I watched this film, My Octopus Friend, because Craig Foster was a broken man, and he went into nature to feel something. He talks about the coldness of the water, just to feel something, and how therapeutic his relationship with nature was, and how long it took. And I'm just going to pull some passages from the Gita. We call it the Gita for short. the Bhagavad Gita was written around the time of Christ. So it's about 2,000 years old. And it's the story of a spiritual seeker and a spiritual teacher. And the seeker is a guy called Arjuna. And his teacher is Krishna, who we see pictured here. And Krishna ends up being an avatar or incarnation of God. Krishna is sort of the Hindu counterpart of Jesus in the Christian tradition. So he is, Lord Krishna is the avatar or incarnation of Lord Vishnu. And Vishnu is one of the three principal gods who is himself Brahman taking form. So Krishna is ultimate reality. He is speaking the truth. And so he spends 18 chapters in this book talking to Arjuna, who is our stand-in. Arjuna is a working man. He's a guy with a job, and he's not a guru, he's not a yogi or a renunciant or a scholar. He's not a specialist. He's not a monk like Thomas Merton living in a monastery. He's a guy with a job, just a regular person like us. And Krishna is trying to talk to him about how to connect with the sacred in the midst of your everyday life. Because if the sacred is anywhere, it's everywhere. And you don't have to go anywhere because it's right where you are. And that's such a powerful message in the Gita. All Craig Foster had to do was leave his house and jump in the water and dive around the coves near his home. This is Lord Krishna now speaking again from this sort of divine awareness. He says to Arjuna, I look upon all creatures equally. None are less dear to me and none more dear. But those who worship me with love live in me and I come to life in them. So this clear message of absolute equality, that whatever the formless sacred source is, and in the Hindu tradition, we would call that Brahmanatman. Whatever the sacred formless source is that gave birth to all the gods, that gave birth to all the forms, that gave birth to all of us, and we retain our essential connection with that sacred divinity. That's the Hindu worldview, right? And Krishna then in that context says, I look upon all creatures equally. How can one creature be more connected to the divine than another? And so when we connect with other creatures, something sacred happens in the dialogue. Martin Buber, the great Jewish philosopher called it the I and thou relationship. When you see the world as an it, as an object, then there's just the ego and the object. That's kind of a dead zone. But when you see all other things in that you dialogue with as a thou, as a reverent sacred presence, the I, thou, Buber says in his Jewish theology that when you enter into any relationship in I, thou consciousness, God fills the space between the two. God is present in the I, thou relationship in a way that he is absent from the I, it relationship. And this whole book is in a way about the I, seeing yourself, seeing each other, seeing owls, seeing octopus as thous, and what that does for you, how that shifts you. Here in chapter 6, verse 30, Krishna says, I am ever present to those who have realized me in every creature. There it is again. And I'm talking about your family dog and cat too. My dog, Cooper, is absolutely a guru to me and all the animals I've ever known. I am ever present to those who have realized me in every creature, seeing all life as my manifestation, Krishna says. They are never separated from me. They worship me in the hearts of all, and all their actions proceed from me. Wherever they may live, they abide in me. When a person responds to the joys and sorrows of others as if they were his or her own, he has attained the highest state of spiritual union. So here what Krishna is reminding us is that empathy is evidence of spiritual awakening, spiritual enlightenment. And the absence of empathy is evidence of a kind of unconsciousness, a kind of darkness, and a kind of egotism, where the only concern is me and mine and me getting mine. In chapter 5 of the Gita, I'm looking at verse, let's see, what is this? Verse 18. Yeah. Chapter 5, verse 18 of the Gita. Just more passages on this same theme. Here Krishna says something very interesting. He says, those who possess this wisdom, namely the wisdom that all is one and that everything is sacred and that your essential core is identical with the divine. Those who possess this wisdom, Krishna says, have equal regard for all. Does this not have power vis-a-vis our webinar last Tuesday on why it's so hard to talk about racism? Many of you were on that class, I know, or have had it with me before. I know that's not our focus this morning, the Anti-Racism Project, but I can't help but hear that ringing in my ears as I read these 2,000-year-old wisdom sayings. Those who possess this wisdom of oneness have equal regard for all. They see the same self in a spiritual aspirant as in an outcast, in an elephant, a cow, and a dog. And the word self here is capital S. That's the Atman, the one universal soul that manifests as all of us. That they see the same Atman in a spiritual aspirant as in an outcast. Oh, so there goes the caste system. In an elephant, a cow, and a dog, such people have mastered life. With even mind, they rest in Brahman, who is perfect and is everywhere the same. They are not elated by good fortune or depressed by bad. With mind established in Brahman, they are free from delusion. Not dependent on any external support, they realize the joy of spiritual awareness. With consciousness unifying through meditation, they live in abiding joy. I love that bit about not dependent on any external support. You know, that owl doesn't have a bank account and a 401k, is not worried about where the next mouse is going to come from. And you hear the monastics of all traditions and the saints of all traditions talking the same way. And yet you and I, in our egoic cages, worry constantly about where the next money is going to come from. And we don't believe that we're supported. We don't believe that we matter. And these great spiritual classics, whether it's the Sermon on the Mount of Jesus or something from the Torah or something from the Gita or whatever, these spiritual classics are trying to remind us of that. Though, and let's bring it home now. This is Krishna in chapter 4, verse 9. Those who know me as their own divine Atman, those who know me, again, he's talking like as God, those who know me as their own divine core, break through the belief that they are the body and are not reborn as separate creatures. As they approach me, so I receive them. All paths, Arjuna, lead to me. That's where this is all going. That once I make that connection with my octopus friend or my great horned owl friend or my dog friend or you or my partner or anybody else, once I make that connection, something awakens inside of me. It shifts me. Once I realize I'm not just laying bricks, but I'm part of a symphony of activity that is building a cosmic cathedral. And I take great joy in playing my part, no matter how humble or small it is. And I connect with the natural world in a way that everything becomes a metaphor. So let me close, as I always do, with a poem by Mary Oliver. I love sharing these scriptural passages with you. And just a quick plug for next month, March, I have 2 more webinars coming up. You know, I'll be here every Friday with you for Friday Reflections. I bet most of you have already registered for all the Friday Reflections in March. But I have 2 webinars coming up on, let's see, on the 9th, I have the 4 Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz's wonderful classic of Toltec wisdom. Now we're coming to Native American scripture. And then on the 23rd of March, a new webinar called American Buddha, the wisdom of Walt Whitman. I'm going to take you through some of my favorite passages mostly from Leaves of Grass. I think Walt Whitman's poetic masterpiece, Leaves of Grass, is also scripture. And I'm using the term scripture rather loosely there. I get it. But to me, what I'm about to read to you is also scripture. And I'm going back to Mary Oliver. It's time for us to hear again out loud her most famous poem, Wild Geese. Every day when I walk down at Lake Murray here, I come across our Canada friends, Canadian friends, the Canada geese that are with us here much of the year. Just magnificent. So I appreciate y'all for being here so much. Let me sign off after this, but I'm going to read for you now Mary Oliver's poem, Wild Geese. And just in light of everything we've been reflecting and contemplating on today. Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about your despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. See you next time, my friends.